Now I'm doing the end of the street with a few buildings there. I don't want to put in so much detail because it's further away, but I'm using a bit of graphite but a lot of blending there as well. A bit of shadows, and then onto, that's a post in the, relatively in the foreground just behind the car, and just finishing off the left side, the left row of buildings, a few bicycles. So that's basically the background done. Now I'll draw the foreground. But I've still got the footpath to do there. There we go. And the road. Showing a bit of detail. And there's the, I put in the base, just with the 8B pencil, blended it out, used, there's an eraser pencil. And then putting a bit of detail I'm using a 2H there, and then an 8B. So the 2H I use just to get the initial circles of the stones, and then apply the 8B to get the shadows around the stones, and just to get a realistic effect happening there. Okay, so I've moved on to the E-Type Jaguar itself, putting in a few details of what you would see through the window. Also, I'm using a mechanical pencil with a 4B lead to just help me draw into details without having to sharpen the pencil all the time. And it's particularly useful for this kind of detailed work. And there's the front glass, the front windscreen. No blender though, because I want the contrast nice and sharp, just to get the effect I want. There's the front bonnet, using the mechanical pencil. Yeah, I'm starting to draw in the vents. Just one by one. Bit detailed there, and just tidy it up with the eraser pencil and then carry on. I wanted the car to look realistic and shiny, so I portrayed the shiny paintwork by drawing with a high contrast, dark areas next to very light areas, etc. Filling in very dark areas using the darker Staedtler Mars Lumograph 8B pencil instead of the Faber-Castell 8B pencil, and drawing these very dark areas next to the very light areas. You'll see more of that further on. Also, an important thing to note, I didn't draw many solid lines on the car in order to get a realistic effect. Although I needed the initial outline sketch to get the proportions right, I used the background to clearly define the outline of the car, and even the line defining the door I only did part way, and then just left the shading to the rest, the rear mudguard or fender as they say in American English. Not a definite line, just use shading just to make it look more realistic. This is still the lighter areas, blending it over and then drawing in the darker areas using the Staedtler 8B. There we go. See, we're getting a nice glossy, shiny look because the highlights are really defined in contrast with the darker parts. Now moving on to the wheels, starting with the rear wheels. So to draw the spoked wheels, I sketched the hubs. There's a smaller circle and then a larger circle on the outside around the small circle, but the larger circle is off center, upward and rightward, so that the centers of the imaginary centers of these two circles align across on an imaginary line that goes directly toward the vanishing point. And the vanishing point is not visible anymore, but that is approximate, but I think that was enough. And then using the mechanical pencil with the 4B lead extensively just to draw in the spokes. Well, actually the dark shade or the dark areas surrounding the spokes themselves, which was a lot of work, but the mechanical pencil was really helpful because didn't need to worry about sharpening it. Just put in a 4B lead and went to it, but it was very time consuming and a lot of hard work. Now I'm just finishing off the areas near the rim, little by little, spreading out the darkened areas to define the inner circle of the rim, and then draw in more detail on the rim itself. Now onto the tyre. I'm actually using the Faber-Castell 8B to draw in the highlight of the tyre, and then using the Staedtler 8B pencil to draw the rest of the tyre. So two different 8B pencils used here. Now I've moved on to the front wheel. This time the hub is drawn with the largest circle offset toward the left and upward as well, so that the imaginary centers align along the imaginary line that heads towards the vanishing point again. And well, the rest of the wheel is really just repeating the same process as I did before. I'm just doing a few corrections on the tyre there. I think it was a bit too big here. And then back to the front wheel. So just repeated the same process. nearing completion here, filling in the front tyre and then the car bodywork with the Staedtler 8B pencil. And well, but there isn't a definite line between the lower edge of the car body and the road. It just gradually blends with the road because the car body obviously is not in contact with the road, not like the tyres, and therefore casts a shadow underneath. So here is my drawing of the Jaguar E-Type completed. Thank you so much for watching.